Welcome to the Sages of Industry podcast with your host, Lynne Brodie. With 30 plus years of Fortune 20 experience, Lynne specializes in strategic activation flow for cognitive peak potential. Each episode features conversations with leaders who have built products and services that simultaneously serve clients, engage employees, and solve real-world problems. Will you be the next global change maker? Subscribe for the latest episodes, and don't miss Lynne's monthly solo series, The Ripple Effect, designed to activate your flow zone for imagination, innovation, and measurable impact. Now let's join Lynne and today's extraordinary guest.
Hi, I'm Lynne Brodie, and welcome to Sages of Industry podcast, where I'm talking with leaders that bring outstanding innovations to the world. While you're listening, think of ways you too can get a spark and bring business for world good. Today's guest is Pate Moore, an old friend of mine. We've known each other for years from when I lived in Atlanta, and we immediately hit it off because we had such great synergy and things that we thought and how we both approached business in a very unique way. So a little bit about Pate is that he's the founder of Humangood, an innovation consultancy that helps entrepreneur-led organizations realize more of their human potential through greater autonomy, ownership, execution, and scale. He's currently writing a book that challenges one of the most common assumptions in business. Despite unprecedented access to knowledge, technology, resources, and talent, nearly 70% of organizational initiatives fail. 80% of the global workforce remains disengaged, and founders continue to find themselves trapped at the center of everything, unable to create the ownership, momentum, and autonomy they originally set out to build. Human beings possess extraordinary unrealized potential, yet most explanations point to people as the cause. For the past 12 years, Pate has been exploring a different possibility. What if the gap between strategy and execution is the underlying systemic polarity between an organization's need for control, predictability, compliance, and risk reduction, and our innate drive to align with human nature, the freedom to create, grow, connect, and contribute? Systems optimize for control. Humans are wired for creation. He calls this friction the human capacity gap, the hidden force that keeps organizations from realizing more of their human potential. And it has led him to an even bigger question. How does human potential become a force of nature? So how does it, Pate?
Well, it is a process of aligning to our nature and truly who we are and removing that friction that is within the organizational system. And for organizations to realize that there are two things going on. The organization needs to optimize for control and efficiency and productivity, but at the same time, we as human beings are innately driven to align to human nature, to our drive and freedom to create, to grow, to connect, and to contribute. And that is sometimes lost. I started my career back quite a long time ago. It was in management consulting, and I began seeing between the fact of strategy and execution, there was this gap. And it wasn't a gap related to the right strategy or production or the right resources. It was the people.
Yeah.
And I kept watching this and I kept seeing the fact that did we achieve the charter initiative? Yes, we did. But there was a lot of stall in it, a lot of drag in it, a lot of resistance to change. And you kept seeing this over and over and over again. And I kept thinking and corporations and the organizations I was working with, they just keep throwing resources at it. More hours, more people, more infrastructure, more methodologies, more controls. But the outcome didn't change.
No, it never does.
And the reality is even if we look at how long this myth, we call it, this consulting myth, that 70% of corporate initiatives fail, it is pretty much a line that most don't achieve their original structure. And so I
Mm.
just began paying attention to it. I could see it, I could sense it, I kept working with it. I would walk away from a project and begin to feel like it just didn't reach a completion. It didn't feel fulfilling for me, and it didn't really feel fulfilling for the people that were involved. And it was about change. It was about transformation. These things were about changing systems to make them better, but yet people walked away not feeling better. So I continued to have this question. And then I came across human-centered design. And when I came across human-centered design and became a practitioner, we were able to add something into the space. And at first, I didn't realize, I couldn't understand it. It was so different from what I was experiencing in my last 20 years of business. And what it was is we were creating a container, a space
Mm.
that allowed people to tap into more of their actual human capacity, more of their potential. We created safe space for them. And I kept watching. I would see people literally in these spaces. We would create containers and we would watch them change overnight. We'd watch them change in minutes and in seconds or minutes. There were moments of synchronicity where
Mm.
people just transformed for a second. And I began to pay attention to that and say, there's something here. And that's where the work and the project really began. It was being that practitioner and realizing we can do this in this space. But then how do we take it back out into the real world? Because employees, this is the problem or the gap, is that people were beginning to feel used. They were beginning to feel exploited because they
Mhm.
were being asked to be vulnerable, to create, to expand themselves. And then they were being told once they were finished to go back to their everyday.
Right, to shut down, to not be
Shut
who you
down.
are.
To
To,
shut
to-
down and not be who you are. And I remember sitting at a large corporation where I was building the innovation lab for the company. And I remember sitting with people that were part of these workshops. And you could see the frustration and the anger because the corporation had actually said, we want to unleash this. We want to tap into this. We know it's there. But in reality, when they unleashed it, they wanted to rebottle it, always.
right. They're afraid to lose control.
Afraid to
They're
lose
afraid to lose
control.
control of the people, of the masses, whereas really, if it's just so counterintuitive and counterproductive that if they really let people open up and blossom and flow, they would get the results exactly what they're looking for. But they're so afraid to let go of all of that. So so this is more of what the human capacity gap that you're talking about, and what you believe is the biggest hidden challenge that you face today in all of that. Can you talk a little bit more about how you're developing out your human capacity gap project?
Yes. So I started with doing a lot of research between what was actually working in the organization and what was not working in the organization and identifying those things. So the reality is that corporations are really good about traditional capacity and capabilities. That means work, resources, skills, knowledge, that type of stuff. But they really
The
weren't good
practical
about
linear.
right. They
Yeah.
weren't really good about what I realized was they really weren't good about, they didn't really know what it means to have human capacity, human capabilities, expansion, and what it means to align to our human nature. So I began doing a lot of research, talking to people, going back and talking to leaders, talking to HR people to understand and talk to them about the frustration, because the reality is when there was a misalignment, there was a friction, and this friction that was being created, what I come to understand, the friction was a disengagement. It was the resistance. It was all the things that we said, the 70% and the 80% was caused by the friction and the misalignment
Mm.
to what human nature really is and what people really want. Organizations, what we come to find out from the research, organizations act from a mindset that is based on transaction. Humans,
Mhm.
in their most core nature, really work from a place of transformation. So there's an illusion. So we figured out there's an illusion between the mutual exchange that is offered in the organization, and that is money for performance. And in reality is people want to create, grow, connect, and contribute. So what I did is I created an organization, I created a type of methodology, a framework, trying to create a new environment, a new system, a new way of working, where we look at the actual constraints that are within the organization, okay, and identify those and where they're coming from and talk to people and interview. It's like doing a massive human-centered design project where we actually do a lot of research, a lot of talking, and we look at the constraints. And then we move into designing conditions that enable human capacity, more human capacity, and access to human capacity. And then the job is to let people step into that and nurture that and create frameworks for that and to help them remember who they are so then they can emerge more in the self-mastery of the expansion and expression of who they are, which then moves people from, here's the thing, it moves you from performing work to creating value.
Yeah, it goes from the task for cash
Right.
to offering the value of who you are and what you bring to the table and your uniqueness and the combination of who you are, your uniqueness that no one else really can bring in terms of everything about an individual, how they see things. It combines their skills, their knowledge, their everything about them, their opinions, their point of view, and the filter from which they see things,
Right.
and be able and brings it and brings it to the table. And it's unfortunate that so many companies, I think they're grappling with the idea that it's not working. But I don't know that they're as far along as in, like, let me like loosen up the reins a little bit. You know what I mean? In the control factor, because it's the whole hierarchy within a corporation of how everybody reports to everybody, this, that, and to the board and to and so on and so on. And so everyone in that chain has to be evolved and so there's bottlenecks and the friction along the
Yeah,
way in terms
absolutely.
of, but if it can really just start with the levels of employees and leadership to a certain level. It's kind of like when I was in global account sales. If the headquarters wouldn't buy from me, I'd go to the locations
Right.
and go in the back door. So if you can't come in the front door, go through the back door. And once you've gained, all of this kind of groundswell, then you can go to the headquarters and to the front door again and say, look, it's working. And then they're like, oh, I better take a really closer look at this. And so there's different ways of showing people how something can work. There has to be people in those leaderships that understand and are willing to take the chance and kind of be the unicorn and the outlier. And then when somebody runs the analytics in the company and they're like, oh, this whole group's an outlier. How did they get such exponential results? And start asking questions. but it's always finding those people.
That's why I decided to really focus my business and this project on entrepreneur-led organizations where there is less structure, less hierarchy, and actually work with leaders who realize their organization has been successful, but it's beginning to stall. And
Hmm.
they're beginning to ask deeper questions. And that's what's important. They're looking for a new way of working versus going to the corporation. Even when we could show corporations, we could bring them in and show them the people. We could let them actually sit in the back of the room and watch people actually transform in front of their eyes.
Mm.
But the structure itself was not able to accommodate or even to allow that to go back into the everyday working space because there were so many layers and so much control needed um, just to accomplish their actual goals and their performance measurements. The performance measurements were all about control, all about risk aversion, all about performance, all about metrics. And it was nothing about expansion and expression as much as they liked it. So I decided to really focus on how can I help entrepreneur leaders who are really struggling and getting up every morning and wanting a decision made without them, wanting momentum without them having to push, and for people to act like owners. So that's really what I'm kind of working on right now. And it's really been my focus to really help the entrepreneur leaders figure out what is causing the stall. Most of them only know from their MBA or from the business books they read. They only know to apply more traditional capacity and capabilities, which will not achieve it because it's not closing that gap that's causing the friction and misalignment.
Hmm.
And that's what I've created a framework or really what I call not a methodology. Well, they can find my work right now. Best place to find me is through my email address, which I'm sure you're going to put in the link. And it
Yeah.
is also, they can find me on LinkedIn as well.
Okay.
That's a great place to find me, to see my background, to read the articles that I've written right now. And a website is soon on its way to becoming, but it's not quite there yet. So look for me on LinkedIn or the email address below. And that's how I'll be more than happy to communicate with people and love to have more conversations. I am looking for a pilot partner, an organization that is looking for a new way of working and might want to pilot this and test it with me. And I'm
Hmm.
also looking for more additional entrepreneur-led leaders who want to talk about and share their stories of how they've grown, how they've had their issues, their problems, what they face today and tomorrow. I'd love to have some conversations with those people.
Okay. And so for all of you listening, I hope it sparked some ideas inside of you. Pate's reach information will be in the show notes. As you look through, listen to the show, go through and look at the show notes at the end. All of that, all of those connection things will be in there as always with all of the episodes. Um, and so, Pate, I always like to ask, is there something I should have asked you, but I didn't know to ask you?
No, I think we had a great conversation in that regard, and I am just pleased to be here. And I love having these conversations because we are on the same wavelength. We both want to make change. And I think we are both helping and working with organizations to really create new ways of thinking about working together and inspiring new ways for people to really step into their most extraordinary potential. We are by nature, we have unlimited potential within us. And
We
I believe
do.
that when we can come together, aligned to our human nature, there is nothing that we cannot accomplish in this world.
This is very true. Most people don't realize their untapped potential. I wanted to have Pate on the show today because I've started in a blog and some things that I put out there, and and it's going to be part of the Ripple Effect, my solo series podcast that I include in this on the future of leadership. And it talks a lot in this particular direction. So this is really wonderful. So um,
I love the
I
ripple effect, by the way. I think that is a great short little things to inspire people. I love those. I'm so glad you're doing those. They're very inspiring.
Yeah, they're small, they're short, but they're powerful. And I've had people say, they're only like 7 or 10 minutes, but I've had to go back and listen a couple times because there's so many nuggets in them. And I'm always surprised at the end that I'm like, what is only like 10 minutes? I felt like I talked and talked. But as long as it hits on the important parts, then and the important points, that's what's most. And it's what I like to call they're snackable.
And that's what I
Yeah.
think people want. People want just little moments they can mull over, they can take with them throughout the day when they're driving to work or they're working on their computer or they're sitting, hopefully sitting in nature somewhere,
Mhm.
absorbing energy and changing their lives. That I think those are powerful little moments. Yeah, I love that, the ripple effect, because they take it with them, right? And then they share it with other people. And I think
They do.
yeah.
Sometimes I do energy activations on them at the end. One of them I did. I'll do it on a couple more as I go forward. But so everyone, thanks for listening to our extraordinary guests today. If you want to tap into your genius zone and need help doing so, you can go to my website, lynnebrodie.com, to get my contact information. I'm known for activating in you a new model of leadership. Please subscribe, like, and share with others, and listen to my monthly solo series, as we just talked about, The Ripple Effect, designed to activate your personal power out into the world. Pate, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. It was a great conversation. Thank you.
You're welcome. It was a joy having you.
Thank you for listening to the Sages of Industry podcast with Lynne Brodie. If this episode sparked new thinking, take one action today. Identify a single opportunity within your business to better serve clients, engage your team, and create measurable impact. Then move it forward. For more conversations with leaders building businesses for world good, subscribe and share this episode with a colleague or peer. And if you're ready to accelerate performance through strategic activation flow for yourself or your team, connect with Lynne to start the conversation. Until next time, lead, build, and execute with impact.